Welcome to the Whitetail Legacy Podcast.
Tomorrow is opening day.
This morning, didn't have a great hunt. Deer didn't move like usual.
We just got set up in the middle of this bedding thicket. Been saving this spot from the rut. I think it's a nice buck.
Boom! Hits a 170.
That was money. I think he's down right over there, maybe 10 yards.
Whitetail Legacy Podcast, bringing you back to the hunt and leaving a legacy.
Baller Rut.
All right, guys, here we go. Episode 3 of the Legend of the Woods series, and we have a 100% legendary buck on this episode. We got Casey from the Management Advantage talking about Oscar, an 8.5-year-old deer, maybe 100-inch rack.
Absolute legend.
Legend. If you guys haven't watched his YouTube video, pause this, go watch that, and then come back to this, and he can put the story out from there. But we really wanted to showcase a deer that was old and not just a giant rack, because it's not all about the rack. And if you get an 8.5-year-old deer that you've hunted for 6 years, or have had history with 6 years, like Casey does, it does not get any better of a story than this right here, guys. If you want to hear the story of how he got it done with his brother on his birthday, on an 8.5-year-old legend, bully buck, tune in from here. Let's get into the partners and make this possible. Start out with the VIP Veteran Broadhead. Homie's got some stat news about the Veteran Broadhead. Hit him with the
Deets?
deets.
I say you're kind of holding it back
I'm just
there.
holding it. I thought you were going to hit it for me.
So last week we kind of started into the veteran. Let's just call that what it is. You know, I shit the bed. I didn't really plan out.
Yeah, no plan.
Had a last minute shift change and didn't go quite as good. So
The pitch, the guy that was warming up the pitch didn't come through.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
bullpen call was short. So
Bullpen.
we're gonna go over two things. We're gonna go over the tip that I was trying to do last week and fumbled on, and then we're gonna cover the blades that I want to cover this week. So the VIP Veteran Broadhead tip, its geometrical shape is 4 flutes. It's designed to make the air molecules go chaotic before it reaches the blades. So with the air being chaotic, it'll not create any lift or deflection, and that makes it only go to where you're aiming. So that means it's going to be field point accurate. And then the tip of the broadhead it has a hole in it designed to use your Allen wrench that you're going to use to unscrew your set screw to release your blades. So it has a hole in there big enough to get that Allen wrench in to easily remove the tip when you disassemble your veteran broadhead for cleaning, or you don't have to you don't have to take the tip off to clean it. So moving on to the blades. The blades fixed are 1 1/4 inch cut. They are cut on contact and they never stop cutting, and all the blades do is get wider in the soft tissue. They do not jackknife open. The blades open, and they don't cam open either. Blades do not displace surface area with the wide cut because the blades are not locked into place. That goes into the variable cutting width. On exit, the blades compress to get through and around the bone using independent blade compressibility, locking back onto the lock ring. We're looking at 1.5 inches to 1.75 inches exit wound. Other blades typically made out of 420 stainless steel Rockwell hardened to 48 to 52, and the Veteran has a 440C surgical steel Rockwell hardened to RC60, allowing you to shoot animal after animal without losing an edge and remaining scalpel sharp, as has been proven by a few veteran shooters. One has killed, I believe, 8 animals with the same veteran broadhead, numerous with 6, and I think the record is 14. So the blades of the veteran broadhead are nothing to take as a joke because they are serious. Moving on to my favorite part of the show, the VIP Veteran Broadhead Shout Out. This week's shout out is Andy Hunt, who served in the Army National Guard from 2000 to 2009 as a crewman on the M1A1 tank. He deployed in 2005 and 2006 to Al-Mahdi, Iraq, Combat Team 28th Infantry Decision for Operation Iraqi Freedom. While in Iraq, he not only performed his duties as a tank crewman, but was also tasked with several other soldiers in training the Iraqi Highway Patrol in tactics to efficiently conduct law enforcement duties in a hostile environment. Andy, everybody here from Whitetail Legacy, the VIP family, and Matt and Cindy, thank you for your service. So, in conclusion of our VIP Veteran Broadhead Shoutout, we'll kick it to Cody.
I'm going to cover Scentlock over here. I got the Osrado 400. I'm going to break down some of the components of this.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah. So we get a lot of message about the Osradio, ozone in general. We have no experience with using ozone in the field. That's not something that we do.
Mm-hmm.
We just use it on our clothes. So one tactic I want to break down here, though, is the tether strap on the Osradio. I like that it if you have like a nail or a screw somewhere or anything, a stick, you can just wrap that tether strap on and it's hanging and ready to go. I use that in my house a lot. I hang it on doorknobs. I hang it on.
I didn't think about doorknobs. That's a nice one.
Doorknobs. Just throw it on there. You want to run it in your bathroom, as if you don't want to set it up. Hang it on the doorknob. A real quick, easy tool. You can actually make a little loop in that and pull it tight if you're worried about it falling off. So that's just one added feature for Scentlock and the Osrado is that tethered loop.
Nice.
Ingram's Outdoor Obsession. All your taxidermy needs. Big news coming out of Ingram's, like we say. A lot of stuff coming out with him. Deets we cannot release yet. Very excited for him. I heard that he may have just put his 2 weeks in somewhere. That's all I'm saying. Moving on to ECW calls. All your custom call needs, custom engraving, custom slates, custom grunt tubes, anything you need in the call world. He is your man. Embry Custom Woodworkings is the go-to for all our call needs. All right, let's get into the show. All right, we got Casey from the Management Advantage. How you doing tonight, Casey?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Doing great, man. We appreciate you working with our schedule and coming on to spend a little time with us and tell the story of this legend of the woods, 8-year-old buck, right?
He was eight and a half.
Man, legend right there. So I'm excited to get into this story, but first I'd like for you to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am the editor and producer of a web show called The Management Advantage. I also own a business called C2 Predator Removal. We trap coyotes, raccoons, basically any predator all over the country. That's kind of my side gig. My main job is, like I said, the editor and producer of The Management Advantage. What we do is basically teach landowners how to manage their land, whether it's 5 acres or 5,000 acres. We try to kind of cater to everybody a little bit and basically, not show people how to kill 200-inch deer, but, try to show people how to, grow a better deer herd or grow better habitat, things like that. We've been doing it. Actually, the show's been around longer than I've worked for it. I think he started it in 2000 or 2003, somewhere around there. How I got involved is I met a fellow by the name of Chuck Sykes. He's a wildlife biologist from Alabama. Met him up here in Illinois on a hunt. I was in college and I was going to school for ag business. And totally different gig than what I'm doing now, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. Started running a camera for him. We were on the Outdoor Channel, and I think it was 2012. Now we switched gears and saw the shift coming, where everything was kind of going web and going away from TV, and we kind of got ahead of the game, and everybody told us we were crazy.
Yeah, props to you guys. You guys did it at the right time, and now look at you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
yeah, I think the first month when we went to straight web, I think our first month's viewership was like 5,200 views, and now we're somewhere in the 400,000 to 500,000 range per month. So it's going pretty good.
yeah, definitely reaching a lot of people, and I mean, high quality content like you said, from everybody. I love it. Like you said, how you're not teaching people how to kill 200-inch bucks. You're teaching people how to hold mature deer on your property.
Yeah, and not even necessarily that. A lot of people, you see all these guys that's what they're after. They don't even want to. You get a picture of a 160-inch deer and they look at it and they're, oh yeah, whatever. That's not something they're interested in. But that's not our game. I mean, we just want to get those deer to the right age and create a story with them. Like Oscar. We'll get into that in a minute. That deer. I don't even know if he scored 100 inches, but that deer means more to me than any deer that I have on the wall. And also, I didn't kill him. My brother killed him. So it's just the stories that you build with the deer. It's so much more than deer hunting. Whenever you get into the aspect of, deer season only runs October to January here in Illinois, but we think about it 365 days a year. Not so much here in the last month or two when we're trying to get work done because it's raining every day. But,
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You know how that goes.
Put the pontoons on the boat to put the food plots in. It's getting ridiculous.
Oh my gosh, we're so far behind on everything we're doing.
Well, we're not even sure if we're going to get ours in, man. It's just, we're struggling.
Yep, it's getting to that point where you're either going to have to do it or don't do it and wait till fall.
Yeah, we're either going to have to plant beans or just do a fall one, like you said. So.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Well, you're definitely, I think you're well known by a lot of people, I mean, your guys' series is one that I really enjoy. I love the trapping side of stuff when you guys showcase that. That's really cool to me. A lot of people aren't out there showcasing that, and that's definitely a management opportunity, you know what I mean? And
oh, exactly. It's huge. A lot of times as far as the management side goes, it's not something that we can necessarily do extremely effective in the Midwest because of, fur trapping and seasons and whatnot. But most of my work is in, Alabama and Texas. They don't have a season, closed season on coyotes. You can trap them year round. So we can actually get in there and trap coyotes when the fawns are dropping, trap coons whenever the turkeys are nesting, and doing it at the right time. And we can get in there and really do some good.
Make an impact. Yeah. It's so hard here. Like you said, when you can trap coyotes, they really aren't affecting a lot of stuff, so.
Yeah. I mean, you can help things a little here in the Midwest, and I hate to get off on I could talk about trapping for all night with you guys. But,
yeah.
But like in the Midwest, we have a season that runs till, mid to late January, and you can do some good as far as keeping pressure off of your deer when they're stressed the most. If you've got deer that are coming to a cornfield, bean field, or whatever to feed them, every afternoon, which like they were this winter. We had a really tough winter. And if you constantly got coyotes coming in there and running them out, they're running a mile to get back to cover, and they're burning a lot of calories, and it's putting a lot of stress on the deer. So
for sure.
You can help. It's kind of a different, train of thought, but it does help. Anything you can do to kind of help balance it out helps. We're not here to kill them all by any means, because you're never going to do that. I've had several people tell me they could kill them all, and you can look that person straight in the face and tell them they're a liar. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. They're very good at repopulating.
Exactly. So. They are. But we do what we can. That was one thing that, whenever we first started this show, we tried to showcase things that really aren't out there. how many times has a food plot been planted, or people showing you how to plant a food plot. There's other things that you can do to really help your property. We still do food plot stuff, and I like to think that every food plot kind of has its own story, depending on the weather and the scenario and the wind direction and how you plan to hunt it, and what your overall goal is, and that's how we're still alive. Is the content's never going to go away, because everything, as long as you look at it in the right light, you're always going to have some new story, within, our little farm. I mean, how many shows can I do on it? I don't know. Probably we could do one every year on the, different deer that show up and how we go in there and try to kill them. But now I'm rambling. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's perfect. I love it, man. I'm learning. That's something me and homie have had the opportunity to do, is do a lot of land improvement stuff this year. We were working with wildflowers, never done any of that stuff. We're working with a lot of CRP, prescribed burns, pheasant habitat. We've done food plots in the past, but we're doing food plots dedicated to, bird habitat. We're doing fire breaks.
You can manage for one thing, like say you just want to manage for whitetail deer, but you're going to get residuals from that with everything else. Everything else is going to benefit from that native warm season grass stand you planted, or those wildflowers you planted. There's so many different animals that will utilize that kind of habitat. And what I tell everybody is better than fescue.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Especially here in Illinois.
That's something that we've really enjoyed.
Yeah. I mean, how much fescue is here in the state of Illinois, and it's totally useless to everything wildlife. It's good for, erosion and water quality, and there's places for it, but I absolutely hate it in a setting where I want to try to manage for wildlife. Yeah,
it's just like a corn, how many cornfields are there? I mean, it has its place, but if you find a good CRP stand, that holds a lot more wildlife. I was hunting on a high point on that area, and we got a couple trail cam pictures of pheasants, but nothing crazy. But I ended up seeing 14 or 15 pheasants that one evening of hunting, and I didn't even know there was that many pheasants on the property. You know what I mean? But very good at hiding, and us doing that little project, we took some pride in knowing that we're helping with the nesting of these birds, to benefit them.
Build it, and they will come.
Yeah, and then I mean, you get the green up for the whitetails, and it's good for everything. So,
exactly,
we have a landowner that's very knowledgeable in that and helping us learn and grow, and then also people like you that are putting out the content for us to absorb to be able to grow from. So,
awesome.
Now I'm rambling. See how we do that? We get into talk about stuff we're passionate about, and here we go. So, all right, let's get into the story of Oscar. So.
All right. Where do we start? I guess I'll start with the farm. What it is, it's 170 acres. It's actually my grandpa's farm. He passed away in 2010, and he kind of has a hand in the start of this. And he actually helped me plant the first food plot. And he passed away, and now my brother or my dad and his two sisters own the farm, and we've just kind of, there's 100 acres tillable on it. So that leaves, 70 other acres. We had cattle on it. It was run down as far as wildlife when we first started. The cows were running through the timber. We had good deer in the area, but it was just default, and it might have held, 3, 4, 5 deer, maybe 10 on a really good day. But then we had EHD come through. 2007 hit us really, really hard. And then 2012 wiped us out again. And we're just now starting to rebound on our deer numbers. But, okay, let's back up. So out of those 70 other extra acres other than the tillable, there's probably, 30 acres of timber. It's not a dream farm by any means. If you looked at it if I showed you an aerial right now and knew nothing about the area or nothing about the farm, you would overlook it. It's one of those farms. I mean, I don't know how many farms I've looked at that kind of look just like it. And you're like, yeah, I don't know. But it's special to us because, we've got sentimental value to it. And it's also special because we've kind of built it from scratch. It was, cattle pasture. And so what we did is we went in, we carved out where we wanted food plots. We added, we didn't go crazy. We probably added 3 to 4 acres of total food plots, put them in the right spots to where we could hunt them with the right wind directions. And then we basically threw as much native warm season grasses at it as we could. We were, and this is so hard to explain over the phone on a podcast, but the farm's basically a draw that runs out into nothing. It's prairie out there. It's really flat. And we basically took it back to what it probably looked like hundreds of thousands of years ago. And honestly, we probably didn't even have to plant any switchgrass. We probably could have done a burn down application and then burn it with some fire, and you probably would have got some prairie restoration naturally, but we wanted to do it quicker. I wanted it established immediately because that's our number one missing factor. I think in pretty much West Central Illinois and a lot of the Midwest is good quality cover. Giving the deer somewhere that they feel safe, and especially a farm like this that, like I said, if you looked at it on an aerial map, you wouldn't think a mature deer would want to live in. So we basically went around everywhere that we didn't put a larger chunk of switchgrass. We did a 60-foot buffer around all the fields, around all the little fingers that come out, 60-foot buffers. We wanted the insulation layer and kind of feather it out. And those deer, it went from, those deer had 2 or 3 spots that they would bed consistently on the farm to now they're bedding all over the place. I don't even want to know how many deer stay in there now. But anyway, so we took the farm from basically a rundown cattle pasture to an absolute jungle of native warm season grasses and food. And when we did it, we kind of had to relearn how to hunt the farm. Basically because the deer were using it differently. When I say we feathered that habitat out, where normally those deer were staying in the timber and you had to get in there with them and you risked a lot of, bumping deer walking in and out. We made it to where those deer are actually walking through those native warm season grasses, and it's like rabbit trails going through them. It's incredible. But we made it to where you could actually, we've got some trees. I killed a deer this year out of a tree. It's a big shingle oak that's out in the middle of a field, and it's the farthest south tree on the whole farm, and you can see it from the county road. But anyway, I had this deer that was coming by it consistently the year before, in 2017. If you remember me killing him, we called him Charlie Brown, and I ended up killing that deer. I killed him out of a different tree stand, but I had hung this stand specifically for him. But I killed a deer out of it this year, and it's like I said, that native warm season grass has totally changed how the deer, act, move, and overall just how they live on the farm. They feel so safe in areas that before you would have never seen a deer where they are now. It's absolutely incredible when you see it go from absolutely nothing to now. It's a paradise in our own little right. And now I'm rambling again, so I kind of lost my train of thought where I was going with that. But
one thing I will say, warm season grasses, CRP, I don't know how many times I said it on this podcast. That is whitetail heaven. You know what I mean? If you got a property with some of that on there, people overlook it so much. Luckily, there's a lot of that around my area, and there's some pieces where there might be 6 acres of timber on it, and it's some pheasant habitat acreage, and I'm like, that's it. People are like, oh, there's nothing there. There's no, and I'm like, okay, nothing there, man. Keep rolling by. But that CRP holds so many deer. The only problem I wanted to bring up right now that we are having in our area is when we get that first heavy snow, is there any way to prevent the deer from just vacating that area if it flattens that CRP?
and that was what I was going to say. There's a lot of difference when people start talking about CRP. Especially whenever you go to NRCS office and there's cool season CRP stands, there's warm season CRP stands, there's pollinator stands. We actually did do a little bit of actual state funded CRP this past year. And that was a mix of, big blue, little blue, Indian grass, and a little bit of switchgrass and a couple forbs in there. And that's better than fescue. It's great if the state will allow you to manage it correctly. And, you've got to go through some hoops and make sure that they understand what you want. But what we did when we first started building it is there was no way that we could sign up what we wanted to do into CRP, because you've got to have that 5 years of crop history. And a lot of it was pasture, so we couldn't sign it up. So we basically footed the bill by ourselves. And I went with, instead of doing a mix, I went with straight switchgrass. And the benefit of switchgrass is it stands up to snow and wind. I mean, you can get a 7-inch snow on it, and it might, if it's a real heavy, sticky snow, it'll lay it down, and you're like, oh, that's ruined. And you come back the next day, it's melted off, and the wind's blowing it off of it, and it stands right back up.
Man, that's what we need. Yeah.
And that's whenever I talk about native warm season grass on our farm, it is an absolute zoo of switchgrass. And
nice.
That's I mean, a good friend of mine from Ohio kind of introduced it to me whenever I first started, really getting into the habitat stuff, and showed me how to grow it, giving me specific details on what to do and kind of follow those recipes. And oh my gosh, if I had to give one thing credit for what took our farm to the next level, it would be switchgrass. If we didn't do any food plots at all, just adding that component in itself has made that place unbelievable.
Yeah, that's our biggest challenge is when the winter hits, our areas just get flattened. I mean, the deer are in there, hardcore. Yep. A lot of does, which bring the bucks in. We'll have some home buddies bucks, but we get a lot of roamers coming to that area because it can hold so many deer, and when that winter comes, man, they just vacate to the timber. So some switchgrass in there is what we need. So
and it can be a little finicky to grow if you're not experienced in it, but there's a lot of information out there and little tricks and tactics you can use to really help it go. I mean, you really need 2 to 3 years to get a good stand on it. I've had some really good luck on a few stands where I had 5 and 6 foot tall stands the first year, but I got lucky with how I planted it, when I planted it, had some timely rains and used the right chemical application on it, and it really took off. But it's I burned a bunch of it this year, and I try to do it as late as I can, just to kind of suppress that fescue encroachment back into it, or the cool season component. If you can wait till that fescue kind of starts to green up before you burn it, that's ideal, because it'll set that back and then your switchgrass kind of has a chance to get going and race above it. But whenever we burn it this spring, mid-April, how much snow and wind did we have this winter? And it was all still standing straight up 7, 6, 7, 8 foot tall on 90% of it.
Nice.
It holds a ton of deer, and it's good. It's good fawning cover. It's good thermal cover, and those deer they realize it. And like I said, so we killed the deer that we're really wanting to talk about, and we've rambled now for 30 minutes about other things. Since we killed Oscar in 2016, but since then, every year we've had him, on our little piece, we've had at least one mature deer make it his home, and we had 5 or 6 others that he ended up kicking out, just because, you can only hold so many mature deer in an area because they don't tolerate one another very well. We run trail cameras all summer, and you might have, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mature deer consistent, and then it's like mid-September rolls around and they start fighting, and then usually by mid-October I've got a pretty good pattern on one deer, and he'll stick in there and and he makes a pretty good chess match out of the season for you. But it's in Oscar. So I guess I'll start on him. He was a deer. He showed up. Let me see if I'm getting this right, because this goes back a long ways. He showed up as a 2-year-old in 2010, and I had a couple trail cam pictures of him, and he was kind of just a weird looking deer. He was kind of squatty. If he was one of a litter of a dog, you'd say he was the runt. He was just weird looking. I don't know how else to explain it. His rack didn't have the normal main beam and the points that come off of it like a 2-year-old would have. He had large bases, but he just kind of main beam went up and just kind of squiggled. And but he was aggressive. He was at every scrape. We saw him several times, and then the next year he was 3.5. Would have been 2011. Same thing. Just looked weird. I've got a bunch of trail cam video of him working scrapes, and you would swear that it was a 1.5 old deer if you just looked at his antlers, but his body said 3. And anyway, he stuck around at, when he was a 4-year-old, would have been 2012. We had an extremely bad heat. And I'm not saying he's the only one that made it through, but it seemed like that was the only deer that we ended up getting pictures of, October, November, December. He was just like, where'd everybody go? I'm here.
He was a survivor.
Yeah, he was the survivor. And anyway, next year, 2013, he's 5. He's still there. He actually turned into an 8-pointer, but he was like 12 inches wide and went straight up off his head.
In his prime.
Yeah, and just an absolute bull. And he just hated every other deer. It's like he had the worst attitude. I mean, we would see him all the time. And, we're surrounded by outfitters, and there is no telling how many times that deer was passed up by non-resident hunters around there just because he didn't have a large set of antlers. And anyway, we really didn't hunt the farm heavily from 2012 to 2013, just because of the sheer fact we weren't getting a lot of mature deer, on trail camera. We were missing that component of the deer herd. It just wiped us out. It wiped our age class out. And anyway, fast forward to 2014, mid-October, I killed a deer on a different farm. It was actually one of the first deer that I solo filmed. Not a giant deer, but he was 5.5 years old. And you'll see a reoccurring theme with me. I'll always say not a giant deer, but he was a 5 or 6 year old. I don't care what they score. If I can find a 5, 6 year old deer, you can cut his antlers off his head, I still want to hunt him. And there's something different about hunting that caliber of that age class of a deer. So anyway, I killed a deer early season, and that year, me and the wife that was the year we got married. We were set to get married October 25th. And so I didn't, I'd killed a deer and kind of laid off a little bit. And actually the day before the wedding, we had went and checked trail cameras out there at Grandpa's farm. And of course, Oscar was there again, 6.5 years old. And there was another deer there that we had been trying to kill. This is a whole nother story, but the deer that I was trying to kill that year, he was 10.5. And I ended up killing that deer 4 days after we got married. Long story short, I shoot him. He runs off. He dies. I'm on the phone with my brother telling him, I just killed a deer. Super excited. The deer was an absolute tank. And out walks Oscar. And he moseys right out there in the middle of the food plot. And he heard me talking on the phone to my brother because I was so excited. And I videoed him coming up through there, but I could have killed him then. But I was tagged out, and he just turned around and walked off. And the rest of the year, we saw him a few times, but nothing, close enough to kill. That would have been 2014. He was 6.5. 2017, he shows back up. We didn't get him killed. I could have shot him twice. Early November, out of our redneck hay bale blind there on the big food plot. But I didn't have enough camera light. He was literally 10 yards in front of me, and I just didn't want to shoot him, because by that time he was 7.5, and we had a hell of a good story going, and I didn't want to not shoot the deer, on film. And we saw him out of the combine. We saw him out of the tractor. We saw him during gun season. We could have killed him out of the truck if we were outlaws. Actually, during gun season, me and Dad were hunting. I was filming my dad, and we had that deer standing right next to where we drive into the farm at noon. We went in. We had went to go eat lunch, and we came back, and he's standing there with a doe, and he took off down through the draw. So we drove around. We had actually left everything in the tree, and hurried in there, climbed up, and no more we got climbed up, here he come, chasing the doe right to us. And like they always do, the doe turned around and walked back the other direction. So, it was just a constant, sightings of him, but it was like he just had the sixth sense.
He had the horseshoe, bro.
Yeah.
That horseshoe, man.
There's no other way to explain it, and you guys know it. Everybody knows that hunts mature deer. They have some other force that's on their side, and it gives them the intuition to go the other direction or whatever. It happens all the time. So that would have been 2015. I think I might have screwed up some dates. I think I said 2017 a couple of times in there. I don't know why I did that, but anyway, he eluded us in 2015, and that was probably the year that his body was the largest. And I kind of wish we would have killed him, late October that year, because I guarantee you he would have tipped 315 to maybe 320 pounds live weight on the hoof. He was gigantic.
His neck was huge.
Yeah, those trail cam pics of him coming through that fence gap or wherever it's at.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh my God. He doesn't even look like he
Yeah.
has a head.
No.
It's just solid mass.
Yeah, it just looks like a 4x8 sheet of plywood.
Yeah.
And so one of those pictures, I've actually got pictures of him. He's like bowed up at another deer, and that was actually 3.5 years old at the time in 2015, and he's still alive. And I'm trying to figure him out right now. His name's Eminem. Hopefully he'll be a future episode.
Like Eminem the tree or like Eminem the rapper?
Eminem. Yeah. He's a ghost too. He's a. We won't even get into him yet because we haven't killed him yet, but he is still alive and well. He's actually got a nice set of antlers on his head. So anyway, let's fast forward. Actually, let's rewind a little bit. So 2016 rolled around, and Oscar was a deer that never lived on our farm in the summertime. And we have that happen a lot, just, because of where the farm's at. It's out in that big prairie country, and it can only hold so many deer, and those deer disperse. There's big, giant agricultural fields, but there's fence rows going through about all of them, and ponds and little ditches and whatnot. And a lot of our deer may live 5 miles away in the summertime. And I don't know where he went. I have an idea of which direction he went, but he would leave like middle of March. He was gone. And you never got a trail cam picture of him ever until the end of September. That's when he would always come back. And we've got a trail camera at the corner of one of our big food plots, and he would walk by that camera every year the same day, September 30th. He would walk by it and look at the camera like, yeah, I'm back. Let the games begin. And anyway, so he kind of showed that little bit of a pattern, and that always stuck back. I've always heard, Mark Drury and lots of other guys talk about, same deer, different year, same deer, same time, different year, where those deer will do the same things from year to year at the same times. So anyway,
That we've talked about that on this podcast a lot. That just blows my mind how that
yeah,
happens.
happened.
And on your video, you show the trail cam pics, and I'm like,
Oh yeah,
that's a tactic I wanted to bring up. It just unbelievable how they have like a clock or something like, well, yep, it's October 1st, time to roll over. I just don't. But
yeah.
we have a couple
they
bucks that
definitely
we're going to challenge that on this year. So
Yep.
I will
It
say,
happened. And some of those deer, it kind of upsets you that you know that you definitely don't have a chance to kill them. Because I've got several deer that I've got trail camera pictures of all through the summer, and here comes September 13th. They gone. And then you get pictures of them middle of January.
Yep.
Like, where did you go? But
Yeah.
you get pictures of a lot of deer like that. And, I hunt a bunch of, different little small farms around, and I can't count on my hand how many deer do that to me.
I don't know
And
where they go, man. They find some hole to hide in because me and homie. That's why like where people put their trail cams out real early. People get. I'm like, we get real jacked about a buck. We watch him grow like Sidekick.
Yep.
The buck I
Yep.
killed last year and a buck we call Sidekick. They're together every summer, and Sidekick he's a 9 with split twos, a bunch of base kickers, probably high 160s, 170 class deer. Every year I get to look at him, and then he just disappears. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I'm like, I don't even want to see him. He comes in there, I'm like, that's just Sidekick. Not gonna kill him. So
the only thing you can hope on deer like that is eventually, and this is documented through lots of other people, and not just me saying this, but a lot of times when a deer gets older, he will tend to shrink his home range, and sometimes they'll stick around. They'll be there in the summertime, and it's like they get to 8 or 9 years old, and they're like, I'm not going over there this time. I'm just
too far to walk,
and
man.
and they end up staying. And the deer that I actually killed in 2014, the deer that I called Grandpa, that was 10 and a half, he did that. He would leave every year, every single year. And he actually left for, what was it? Oh my God, it was 4 years where I didn't even get a picture of him. From 6 to 10, I didn't get a single picture of the deer. Thought he was, he was gone out of my mind. No inkling that he was ever alive. And like I said, we checked those trail cameras the day before my wedding, and all my groomsmen were here, and Chuck was here, and he remembered seeing the deer that I called Grandpa forever. And we're sitting there in the hotel room drinking beers night before the wedding, scrolling through trail cam pictures, and everybody's kind of huddled around the camera.
That's epic.
That sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
And as soon as that deer pops up, we both looked at each other and said, "That's Grandpa." How? And I, I've got a decent memory when it comes to deer. I don't have a good memory when it comes to anything else, but I never forget a deer. He had a certain marking cut in his ear, and he just the way he looked, and he showed back up, and he made that place his home again. It was just super awkward, but like I said, now we're rambling again, but
we're 90% sure that we got Sidekick about a mile away on trail cam, and we're gonna kill him.
Yeah.
Homie's gonna kill him next year. So
yeah,
Gonna try.
well, good luck with that.
yeah.
We've got several that are on the radar, but our place, it's so hard to predict, what deer. Now that we've got it built, and there's so many, we've got a really good number of deer coming back, and our age class is coming, and from 4th of July to September 1st, we'll probably have pictures of 7 or 8 mature deer on this one little farm. And some of them will be really consistent. Some of them you just get 1 or 2 pictures of them, but you really don't know. And it's kind of cool when leading into the season now, because you don't know who's going to stay or who else is going to show up. And that's one thing about habitat management is you know, not only does it, get you in the outdoors or get your kids in the outdoors or, introduce new people to the outdoors, but it causes this game of, cat and mouse or guessing game of, what deer is going to show up. And especially, like I said, on our farm, because of where it's at, out in that big ag country, you might have a deer that has never stepped foot on your farm, but whenever they start to lose their velvet in September, they have that big shift where they leave their summer range, or maybe they go on a little bit of a little jaunt, a 2 or 3 mile loop, and they may come back. But if that deer maybe has never set foot on your farm, but it's attractive, he finds something that he likes, he might stay. So, you never really know what you're going to get. And that's what's happened the last 3 years in a row now out there at our farm. We've got all these stories going with all these deer like M&M, and there's 3 other ones. We have the last 3 years, we've had a deer come in that we've never seen before and shows up mid-October, and you can tell he's a badass, and he just kicks everybody else off. And, a lot of times, those deer are inferior in the antler department, but
they're still badass, like you said. They're still badass.
I'll probably never kill a deer that's giant in the antler department, just because I love killing those deer. They're mature, they're mean, they respond to a snort we use really well, and I can't back down from them. The deer that I killed out there this year, oh my gosh, he was so fun to hunt, and he was living in the same exact spot as Charlie Brown and Oscar from the year before, and he made the little 5-acre spot his home. And you just never you can't pin them down in little bitty areas like that, because they can bed down in several different areas. They're close, but he might go the other direction one night, and then you got to start the game all over again. But that's why it's called hunting and not killing.
For sure.
Yep.
I've shot some decent deer, but I got an Oscar in my life. I call him Nike, and I want to kill that deer something fierce. And his right side looks like a Nike swoosh.
Yeah.
It's just a main beam, goes down and makes the Nike sign. Weird as hell. And I want to kill him something fierce. I killed a 190, and then I was hunting that deer that might have been 80 inches for my second buck of the season. You know what I mean? I'm the same way. It doesn't matter to me. Of course, I want to shoot a giant deer, but if a deer's cool and old, that's just as good as a buck.
And that's another thing I wanted to say about the habitat management stuff and what we do is we're not there to specifically grow a 200-inch deer. We're there to increase the carrying capacity, increase the age structure, and hopefully, have a shot at killing a mature deer. Eventually you're gonna get an opportunity at a high scoring deer. It's just gonna happen sooner or later. But you might have to weed through, several of the inferior deer. And I am 100% fine with that, because you got to go back to what I just said. We're here to increase the carrying capacity, make healthier deer, and increase your age structure, and overall have a healthier herd. And the Boone and Crockett deer are going to eventually, if of course, if you're in the right spot. If you're in Alabama and listening to this, you're like, you're crazy. We ain't going to grow in a Boone and Crockett deer, but it's all relative. I mean, if you can grow, if all you can grow is a 130-inch deer, and he's 5.5, 6.5 years old, I mean, that's the equivalent of killing a 170 or 180-inch deer up here. We've managed ground all over the country, and it's all relative, and you got to have realistic goals. So we've gotten super sidetracked.
Hey, we're professionals at that.
I don't even know where I was.
Last time
I think I had done.
you'd gotten through 2015. Let's start into 16.
Yeah. So I got to where in 2016 when he showed up, and I told you about how he showed up every September 30th on the same day and walk by the same camera within the same few hours.
Mm-hmm.
So he did that. He shows up. He's the bully of the farm. I end up seeing him. I didn't see him the whole month of October. I was trying to concentrate on another deer as well. Got a little sidetracked. And anyway, November rolls around and I could have shot him again, but it was too dark in our big food plot. And I let him walk, and it was November 7th when I encountered him. And he was by himself, and he was just cruising around and making scrapes, and he just happened to walk out, 5 minutes too late. And anyway, wind was wrong the next day. November 9th, I saw him again, and it was from afar. I was basically in an observation stand just because of the wind direction. And November 10th, we had 30-mile-an-hour winds, and I said, the winds were out of the right direction. I said, I'm going to go in. I'm going to check some trail cameras and see if I can see anything. Sure enough, he was there November 10th, like 30 minutes before I got to one of the trail cameras. He was just making laps, and he was by himself, which is a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
So I go home. I'm going through those trail cameras, and I remember, that deer kind of had that same deer, different year, same time pattern, he had that tendency. So I started going back through pictures, and I was focused on, November 11th and 12th, because that was the next couple of days, and my brother had some days off that we could hunt. And so I pull up like 2 pictures of 2 previous years on November 12th on a certain portion of the farm. We've got a tree stand right there by it. He had walked by it both years on the same day in the middle of the day. And I was like, surely not. But I looked at the weather for November 12th on my birthday. We had the right wind. Met my brother out there. We slipped in there. And it was like one of those days where you only get a couple of days out of the year where it seems like every deer is walking around like a zombie.
Right.
Because it's like everything is peaked out and they just don't care about being daylight. They're just walking around. And we had several bucks come by. Long story short, Oscar comes in straight downwind of us. I do not know how he didn't smell us. And there's so many other things that go into the story that I could get sidetracked on. But anyway, he comes in, he's downwind, and I didn't want to do anything to let him, I didn't want to call to him. He was on a trail where he was going to cross the creek and he was going to go away from us. And I let him go because I didn't want him, he had the angle on us, so to speak, where if you called to him, he definitely would have gotten downwind without getting a shot. So we let him walk pretty much dead away from us and we both know where this trail goes, and it crosses the creek and it goes down through the bottom and then it crosses the creek again and he gets on our side. And where our tree stand is at, it's the ideal location, south wind. It's up on a high little creek bank, and where the snakes are all there, and it's on a high bank, and all the bucks cruise through there. They usually cruise right through there, and I don't know why he didn't take that trail to begin with, but anyway, we let him go past us. He gets on the same side of the creek as us. He is directly upwind, and there is no way for him to get downwind of us if we call to him. So I told Dallas, I'm going to snort wheeze at that deer. He's 8.5. He's been a bully all his life. All the deer acting crazy today, he's going to turn inside out. And so he's like 100 yards and it's dead calm, and I snort wheezed at him, and it's like he almost broke his neck when he looked up at us, and he could see like he's squinting his eye, like, who's over there? And he walked and he marched right up to us and put on a show for the camera, hooked trees, and walked directly underneath of us. And my brother just pinwheeled him at 10 yards, and he died on camera. And if you watch the video, you get to see me cry like a little baby, and it was pretty incredible because lots of emotions go into something like that when you get a deer that's you followed him basically for 8 years of his life. It's on your grandpa's farm, and then you think about all the things you did to grow that deer, or not necessarily grow him, but try to keep him there, and all the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into it. And it's your birthday, and you got to film your brother kill him, and Dad comes out and does the recovery with us. And I don't know, it's like I said, he probably didn't score 100 inches, but I wouldn't have cared if he scored 200 inches. It was that important to us.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of work just come to fruition right there. A lot of time, a lot of build up, a lot of close encounters. It being your birthday, and then like you've said a couple times on here, it's not about growing a 200-inch deer. It's just about letting that deer live its life, and living it to the longest extent that you guys can provide for it. And Oscar definitely had one hell of a life.
Yep. And actually, so the night before we had killed him, the neighbors to our north, they were actually hunting, and they had him at like 35 yards and just couldn't get a shot at him. And he said he probably could have squeezed an arrow through there, but just didn't want to take the shot. And I talked to him the next day and told him we had killed him, and he was pretty happy and said, "Man, I'm glad you guys killed him. Just as much history as you had with him, it felt right for us to get in there and get it done." But it made it so much better that we had it all documented, and there was a lot of things that we probably could have documented a little bit better in my mind. But a lot of times you just don't have a camera in your hand when you need to, when you're running a combine or running a tractor or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. Your reaction on that kill is awesome, man. You can tell, just the pure, pride and joy of harvesting that deer, the years that it took, and then it all coming together with your brother. I mean, that's epic, man. And like I said before we started this, we wanted you in the legend of the woods because this buck is a legend. But after you kill him, you're like, this deer is a legend. I'm like, guys, this is so awesome. It just fits so perfect for what we were trying to showcase here. It's not shooting a giant deer, that makes it a legend. But also shooting a deer with 6 years of history and it's 8.5. That is a legend. Yeah. Hands down. Don't matter if it had no rack, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever be able to top the story. And he was the first one that that was really the first deer that I'd gotten to follow for that long. Because, I mean, you really don't get that many of those in your life. You follow a deer for 6 years. Well, how often does that come around? Usually he ends up dying as a 4-year-old or dies as 5 or 6,
Yeah, or gets hit by a car or something,
Car or train or whatever, or EHD. He survived through that. The day that we killed him, if you watch the video close, he's got a big giant swolled up front, like right where his knee is. It was like as big around as a volleyball. It was all full of pus. I don't know if he'd gotten stuck with an antler or what exactly had happened, but they're resilient animals, that's for sure.
I'm gonna have to go back and check that out.
Yeah, I didn't notice that either.
Yeah, and that was actually what the neighbor told me. Like I told him that we had killed him, and he said, "What was wrong with his leg?" Because I didn't know if he'd actually seen him or not. And he's like, "What was wrong with his leg?" And I was like, "I don't know," but he's like, "Yeah, it was all swelled up." And I was like, "Well, you caught it too then." But I actually didn't see it until I watched the video later that night. And when we recovered him, I could see it, but I didn't notice that it was that noticeable until I watched the video back. And you're like, whoa, he did have a big old gash in him. But he'd actually, the year we killed him, that was actually the biggest set of antlers he'd ever grown. But he broke most of them off. He broke his main beam, broke his what would have been his, I guess it'd have been his G2. He just wasn't much. He just like a big
just epic is what he was. That's all that matters.
Yeah, he's just super massive. I mean, even his gold plate when we caped him out, and you look at the thickness of his skull was just, oh, he's like a battering ram. He's just a big old bully. He was starting to lose his sight in one of his eyes. You know, on the trail cam pictures, one of his eyes didn't glow anymore. Yeah, he was. I don't know how much longer he would have lived.
Yeah,
But,
it's awesome that you got to connect on him instead of finding him dead and ending the story like that.
yep.
But definitely,
My brother actually killed another deer this year on a different farm. It was actually on my other grandparents' farm. It was 8.5, and we had just as much history with him, but we didn't get it on video. And I actually never videoed the deer on the hoof in the daylight, but we had trail cam. I probably got more trail cam pictures of that deer than any deer I've ever gotten. But that deer was weird. I hate to get off on a tangent, but that deer, every trail camera picture I ever got of him, when he walked by the camera, he had his mouth open.
huh?
Explain that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We hungry.
It was like he had a breathing issue with his nose or something. But
Might
he was
have.
he was another deer that he didn't score a lot. He was probably 135 as a slick 8 all his life, from the time he was 4 to the time he was 8.
I don't
But,
think that I would enjoy hunting deer as much if you couldn't create a story with them. It would just wouldn't. It wouldn't be as fun. You know what I mean?
I know it.
It's-
It makes it that much more involved. Whenever you're doing habitat work and you're kind of doing it, maybe it's for a specific deer if you've got the access to the land and whatnot. But now that we have created the home on that farm, it's like I said, it's kind of a guessing game as to what deer will show up. And I think it's as long as we keep doing our maintenance on it, it's built for life.
Yeah, like you said, you build it, they will come. You got it
Yeah.
built,
And
and you know it's been successful. So just keep her going. And
Yep, and we've got it. I mean, native warm season grasses, they'll last forever if you manage them right. Put them on a 3-year rotation of burning and maybe some mowing and maybe a little bit of disking, but they'll last forever. Your food plots are an annual thing if you're doing a grain crop, but you can plant some clover and kind of incorporate that into it. You can do some soft mass trees. You can go in and do some TSI, and it's never ending. There's always something to do. There's always a tree stand to improve. I've got a bunch of them right now. I need to go trim lanes, right now, just so I'm not doing it whenever the deer are trying to get acclimated to the place, but later in the fall. But
yeah, that's another thing. If it wasn't in the cycle of you being able to improve, it wouldn't be as fun either. 'Cause there's always, every time that we go hang a stand, we're always thinking of a certain deer, and there's, you hang a stand in your mind, you're imagining, oh, that deer is going to come right here. It's going to be money.
Oh yeah.
Like 0.5% of the time that works, but it's enough to keep you going. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
you get hooked on
Yep.
that dream of it's going to happen right here. And then you just don't see anything out of that stand, but
Yep. That, and it also, like, for me, it's something for me and Dad to go out and do together. Often I sit there and I'm like, well, what would we do together if we didn't go work on the farm?
yeah, yeah, that's true. I don't, if me and homie didn't have
other
this
than going
podcast or hunt, we wouldn't, we hang out together with the kids sometimes, but not a lot.
No.
So this is kind of the way we hang out, friendships can be made around deer hunting, man, lifelong ones. So.
Oh, exactly. And we both learn stuff every year. And, Dad taught me from a little kid. Now I think I taught him a little bit about habitat management. And it's been super, super fun. And at the moment, I'm looking for a farm to buy. So if you see one down this way, send it on. I'd like to.
You say you're going to buy me a farm?
To buy one and start turning one in from my own dirt. So.
Yeah, that'd be epic, man. Turn one in, and then, I just couldn't imagine going out and being like, you see that tree? Yeah, that's my tree. You know what I mean? That would just be so.
Yeah.
Eventually, that's going to happen in my lifetime, and that would be pretty epic, to be able to go out there and say, I'm going to plant a food plot right here. I ain't got to ask no questions.
Nope.
This is what's going to happen,
Yep.
So.
Yeah, but you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, that's for sure. And we right now we're taking advantage of just learning, and absorbing as much knowledge as we can, and figuring out, food plots and prescribed burns and native grasses and stuff. I learned a ton from you about, switchgrass. I had no idea. Like when people talk around here, it's just CRP. There's not like multiple different categories. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of especially with the warm season grasses and all the native plants, that stuff can get really confusing. And I definitely don't know all there is to know about it by far. Do I not? I mean, yeah, there's still so much to learn, but I do know the basics of switchgrass. You gotta site prep is key. Get everything killed. Kill. I mean, sometimes like out there at Grandpa's, like I said, a lot of that was cattle pasture and all fescue. So what I did, ideally, what you would do with a stand like that and getting one established, you would go in there in the fall and spray it with a good heavy dose of Roundup, and it sucks the poison into the roots, and it's pulling all of its energy down into the roots before fall anyway, and that's how you get a good kill on fescue. And then you would come back in the springtime and spray it again as soon as everything starts to green up. Spray it, kill it, and then I would even let it green up one more time and spray it again. And you can, Roundup, you can spray it and plant it the same day because it's a contact killer. It's not going to hurt that seed. So that's what I did. I basically, sprayed it 2 or 3 times and make sure the slate's clean. And then, switchgrass, the seed is so tiny that we were basically planting it. You want it, 80% of it laying on top. And the first couple of stands we planted, we rented the drill from the NRCS, and planted it, used a small seed box, got it down to, 4 to 5 pounds the acre, and drilled it in and basically just laid it on top, let the rain bring it in. And it worked really, really well. The last couple stands I've done with the Terminator, it's a really good company that, I'm good friends with the guy that started building them. And now that he sold the company, they're out of Georgia now. But I've planted several stands with that, and it's worked extremely well. You can also, I don't want to get in particulars because everywhere is different, but you can also spray some atrazine as a residual at the time of planting. And then when switchgrass gets to a certain height, you can also spray it with some 2,4-D, which is a broadleaf killer. And a lot of times, around the 4th of July, you're going to get a heavy influx of ragweed, which is really good for deer and quail. But when you're trying to establish, a switchgrass stand, you got to get rid of the competition. I mean, that's first year right out of the box. You've got to keep the switchgrass above everything else. So, to go in there when it gets to 5-leaf stage, hit it with some 2,4-D, knock out the competition. If you have to mow it and clip it right above, the switchgrass seedlings, do that. And then you're in it for the long haul. Because like I said, once you get it established, it's there. But now I'm rambling. I mean, I could. Oof.
Hey man, this is good knowledge. I'm learning over here. This is stuff that, you get someone on you that has the experience to talk about. We could have you on again just talking about land management, for a whole episode. So.
Oh man, I'm better at telling stories.
Well,
as you can tell.
Yeah, we appreciate you spending some time with us and telling us this story of Oscar. Definitely a legend of the woods. I'm so happy it worked out the way you did, and you guys got to document it so guys like me can binge watch it on YouTube. So make sure and check them out. Management Advantage on YouTube, Facebook. What's your Instagram? Management Advantage?
Yeah, the Management Advantage.
Yeah,
yep.
And
Facebook, YouTube, our website. They're all on there. We generally try to put out a new video every 2 weeks. Show wise, and then we do a lot of other small videos on products and whatnot, and try to provide some content for you guys to learn from. Maybe sometimes a little entertainment, but
yeah, content's key, man. I learn a lot. I appreciate you guys putting out stuff.
Yeah.
I follow you guys, and I'm pretty much fanboying over here having you on the phone for an hour. So I appreciate your time, man.
No problem. I appreciate you having me on.
Man, how awesome was it to hear that story of a just absolute stud, old, mature deer?
I was jacked the whole time. I've watched this stuff on YouTube. Huge fanboy of Management Advantage. I'm a huge fanboy of Casey now. If you guys want to know a legit dude, Casey is one of them. We had a real long talk with Casey. Think we made a really solid friend.
Yeah.
Excited to maybe get some more of him on this podcast, talking about trapping and some other details.
I'm going to say he's full of knowledge other than just, shooting old, mature deer.
Yeah,
I mean,
which he's very good
he
at.
knows how to turn a piece of land into something that can benefit you if you want to. I know he said it's not all about growing that 200-inch deer, but, some people are about growing that 200-inch deer, and he's got the knowledge to help you achieve that goal. And, even if it's not about that, he's got, the details of how you can help keep deer on your land longer.
Yeah. Does, bucks, better fawns, better your land, better your hunt. Plain and simple. Again, like we said at the beginning of this, we thought it was very important to showcase a legendary buck that had a less than 100-inch rack.
Right.
Because it's not all about the rack, it's all about the hunt. But the legends we're all out there chasing is those giant bucks or those really old bucks. And we showcased a really old buck with a lot of history in this one. And I think Casey nailed the story. Shout out to him. Shout out to Management Advantage. Hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Remember, get out there. It's a time to improve your land. Try to improve something out there, whether it's planting a tree or planting a plot. Get out there, leave a legacy. Whitetail Legacy is out.